Hello and welcome to Westminster Watch. I'm Nick de Bois, and this week we're talking about some of the biggest stories of the year. 2024 was meant to be the most democratic year in history, with hundreds of millions of people voting in more than 70 countries. It was a difficult year for incumbent parties, with Donald Trump and the Republicans winning big in the US and Labour ending 14 years of Tory rule here in the UK. Talking through these big moments with me are three top media commentators. We have Andrew Pearce, consultant editor and columnist at the Daily Mail, Charlotte Griffiths, editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, and finally the author, journalist and broadcaster Emma Woolf. Welcome to Westminster Watch. Andrew, let's just go back to January of 2024. Did you see President Trump winning to become President Trump again?
No, not then. I wasn't sure. It depended on how well Biden did. That was always my view. But if you wind forward some months, I have money on Trump winning the election, and I'm glad he won it too, by the way.
And a good chunk of money.
I'm not a huge bettor, unlike Tory MPs, many of whom bet on the outcome of the British general election.
We might be coming to that now you mention it.
So I won a couple of £100, but Trump is a phenomenon and a remarkable campaigner, and he blew away the Democrat candidate who was worse than useless.
Now, listen, Charlotte, I have to ask you this. We were obviously consumed by Donald Trump for a very important reason. One of his pre-election pledges, when no one was sure if he was going to win, was all about our very own Prince Harry. So before I invite you to talk about this, let's take a look at what Trump said.
If he's lied on his visa form, doesn't
I
the truth need to come out?
We'll have to.
Should he get special privileges that nobody else does?
No, and we'll have to see if they know something about the drugs, and if he lied, he'll have to take appropriate action.
So, Charlotte, here we are. Prince Harry writes in his book, I Took Drugs. Allegedly, most people are suggesting that you wouldn't write that on your immigration form, and if you lied, you could be on your way out. Will Trump deliver on his election promise?
I don't think he's going to chuck Harry out. I think it's more likely that he'll embarrass Harry by having the Heritage Foundation reveal the documents and see whether
they're the company, they're the organisation that have been trying to get them published, aren't they?
So they believe that we should see his form and see whether he ticked the box, I took drugs, or if he didn't. And either way, he will have lied. He will have either lied in his book that he hasn't really taken drugs and he was showing off to sell copies of his book, or he lied on the form. There's an amazing cartoon doing the rounds, and it's when Trump met Prince William, he hugged him, and in the cartoon it says, "Don't worry, I'm going to make sure your brother gets chucked out of America." And then Prince William goes, "No, please don't, keep him." And that's, I mean, you've got to. I wish I was a fly on the wall when they met. I wonder if they did discuss whether or not they were going to turf Harry out.
Trump's a bit obsessed by, if you like, our royal family, though, isn't he?
That's the thing. Firstly, I have to say, of course, Harry didn't lie. Every single kid that age, of his age, definitely. Of course, he took drugs. He wasn't lying in his book. He was showing off. But yeah, he definitely took drugs. I don't think Trump adores the UK. There is no way he's going to throw Harry out of America. It's just not going to happen.
Well, there you are. You're not only reviewing the year, but making predictions. But whilst the world, not unreasonably, has been pretty obsessed with President-elect Trump, again, going back to January, Andrew, we were all glued to our screens, of course, if you remember, a little bit in a parallel universe, because we were consumed by Mr. Bates and the post office. Let us have a clip of what was that all about.
The computer system post office spent an arm and a leg on is faulty.
No one else has ever reported any problems with Horizon. No one.
You're responsible for the loss.
I haven't got that money.
What was this all about, Andrew? And you were particularly interested in it, weren't you?
This is one of the greatest scandals in British public life. People who run post offices, which are a key part of the local community, often in small villages and towns, were accused of stealing from the post office. But the problem was they weren't stealing at all. There was a major problem with the IT system which the post office had installed. Here's why it's such a scandal. The post office knew there was a problem with this IT system. The chief executive knew there was a problem with this IT system, but they allowed major prosecutions to go ahead. Some postmasters went to prison, some took their own lives, and it took a TV programme in Britain called Mr Bates and the Post Office to bring it to public attention, and it's created a major scandal. There's been a public inquiry which only ended this week.
But
this has been going
it wasn't
on for
immune
14
to politicians,
years.
was
No.
it? Politicians were aware. They kind of fudging it. Why does our political system fail us when these people deserved support many years before?
Why does it fail us? Because they're little people. They were unimportant. It took, as Andrew says, it took a TV drama about this for it to get on the radar. And you know, I think this is a really interesting choice because it's the first of two important small people, little people stories this year. The other one was the infected blood scandal, which was an incredibly, you know, it's a scandal which affected people without voices, unimportant people, so-called. And actually these people did matter, and as Andrew says, they lost their livelihoods, they lost their reputations, they lost their standing in their local communities, and some of them even took their lives over this.
Charlotte, it sort of beggars belief a little bit that something like this could have happened. What is it, though, that, what does it say about democracy that it takes a production by a TV company to right such a huge wrong?
I think it just shows that we're so reliant now on storylines and the theatrics of a thing, because it was almost, because we did know about it, but it's almost as if people couldn't really imagine what they were going through, and it was all a bit technical and a bit hard to picture. Once it was laid bare on this amazing, compelling television show, the whole nation put their hearts and souls into driving the message forward. And finally, politicians listened, but you're right, it wasn't very democratic.
Do you think it affected the election, though?
No, sadly, it didn't. And the irony is, the leader of the Liberal Democrat Party, Sir Ed Davey, had been the Post Office Minister when this was first raised back in 2010. He was the Post Office Minister for 2 years. And Mr Bates, who is the star of this TV drama, he tried to seize Sir Ed Davey, who wasn't interested, kept rebuffing him, and he won. The Liberal Democrats had their record number of seats at the last election. Ed Davey wasn't even damaged by it. It wasn't an issue in the election
Didn't really
campaign.
answer the questions.
And it should have been.
Really
and it
good
should have
point.
been. And here's the terrible thing about Ed Davey, is if it wasn't bad enough that he took no notice of these postmasters, he was briefly out of Parliament for a couple of years. He took a consultancy with a legal firm which paid him £275,000, the same law firm used by the Post Office to crush those postmasters. Scandalous.
Well, now listen, we've mentioned the general election. I've got to say, as someone who is consumed by politics, that on the day one of the election, Emma, an ominous feeling settled over me about how it might go for the Conservatives. Let's take a look at this.
Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
He is absolutely soaked through there.
Cue a million puns, things can only get wetter, Rishi in the downpour, all of that. The thing is, we had been speculating for months about this. Finally, in May, out of the blue, it was, I can't remember, the morning or the afternoon, he comes out and does this. He starts off, he's a bit wet, and then it gets really heavy. And he gets to that point where you can't run out with a volley. He's got a really warm, dry media room inside number 10, where they could have done the announcement. It was farcical, but it was also a relief. It was going to happen. It was going to happen in July.
You mean the election was going to happen?
The election, he'd finally called it. You know, was he going to go long? Was he going to wait until the autumn? But it's also, I chose, the sort of highlights of the year that I've chosen are actually sad as well, because I think he called that election probably at the wrong time. Lots of people feel he should have waited. And look at the state of the country now. A lot changed on that day, and a lot, you know, it's sort of looking back, it's a different world in a way, I think, considering what Labour have done. But also, we were laughing at the fact that Rishi was there, absolutely drenched.
It became a metaphor for the entire election campaign. Accident-prone.
He lost it in that moment.
He did.
It did, but of course, you may feel sorry for what happened. There will be many people who will receive pleased to see the back of the Conservatives, of course.
They deserve to lose.
And who
They
most
deserve to
people would
lose.
agree would deserve to lose,
We
wouldn't
don't
they?
deserve what replaced
No,
them.
but they deserve to lose because they were useless.
And
So-
obviously he didn't follow advice because he couldn't even, be persuaded to use an umbrella. It's just, it summed up everything
This
that
has
was
come
wrong
out
with
a lot.
Rishi's
He
tin ear.
closed himself down to advice, period, didn't he?
Yeah, and that summed it up,
And
didn't
what
it?
I thought was really interesting, he references the King. He'd spoken to the King when he told the cabinet about the election. It was July the 4th. They wanted to have a discussion about it. He said, "Sorry, I've already been to see the King." That constitutional weird situation. The Prime Minister went to see the King. Done. Couldn't be undone. Even if none of the cabinet wanted the election on
And
July the 4th.
really, afterwards, it came out that he just had enough. He'd
He
had
had.
enough of the speculation. He'd had enough, basically, of being Prime Minister. And that's not how you make these decisions. And that's why one feels angry and sort of sad about this, because a lot has changed in the country.
But you see, let's go back to your essential point, which you are clearly very disappointed in what's happening to the country. There are people, aren't there? And Andrew, let me ask you this. There are people who will see the real winner from this election is not Keir Starmer. It's actually Reform and Nigel Farage, who are now bursting on the political scene.
There is no doubt Reform and the UK are the big winners. People are fed up to the back teeth of all the major political parties. He's the insurgent, if you like. He's only got 5 seats, but he got 4 million votes, his party, more than the Lib Dems, who got 72 MPs. But polls are now showing he's either ahead of Labour, level pegging, and I think there's a chance we're going to get a massive breakthrough for Reform at the next election. He's also had quite a coup in the last week. He's pinched a treasurer who's a billionaire, who'd been a member of the Tory party for 15 years, who's got great links to Elon Musk, who could be writing a cheque for Reform to the tune of up to £20 million. That's a game changer.
Yeah, that is a game changer in
Is
UK
it
elections.
healthy that
And they were all
a foreign resident, a foreign national, could give so much money to the UK
It
election
seems to be
system?
legal because he can funnel at Elon Musk if he's going to give all this money, and I think they were all at Mar-a-Lago last night, the night before, a few weeks ago anyway, having these cosy chats, Nick Candy and that lot. But it will be legal unless Labour can change the rules in time, but it will be a game changer for UK politics. I don't like this Elon Musk interference. I find it quite odd. He's really been very vocal on X about UK politics, specifically about the Labour government.
But he fears freedom of speech is going to be restricted in this country by this repressive Labour government, and that's what he's doing. Look, I think it's an odd mix for Nigel Farage, who is the people's champion, if he's going to take money from a billionaire who doesn't live, who's not registered
he
to vote
worked
here.
with quite a lot of rich people when he was in the city, of course, Nigel Farage.
And look, the Tory party's been taking money from rich people for years and years, and the Labour
to be
Party
fair,
kept
Labour
going,
Party
the
are doing it.
trade unions. So, but it will be Nick Candy, I had a long conversation with him last week. He is pretty confident, and I saw Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, at a do the other day, and said, very careless to lose Nick Candy.
Now, let us just turn to another key news item. But Andrew, in this case, it was a news item that you weren't reporting. You led the news when it came to talking about the Deputy Prime Minister of this country and her love of being photographed. They are splashed all over the front page. What was behind all this?
The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, is a vainglorious woman, like so many politicians. When she was in opposition, she regularly baited and tormented Boris Johnson, the then Prime Minister, because he had a vanity photographer paid for from the public purse, based in Number 10. So wherever Boris went, the photographer went with him. Surprise, surprise, Miss Rayner, I discovered she had a vanity photographer in her role as Deputy Prime Minister. Never happened before. The previous Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, who would be out of his depth in a puddle, frankly, he never had his own personal photographer. Angela for the first time, and it cost the taxpayer a mere £68,000 for his salary.
Do you think it registers with
Yes.
the public?
Yes.
Do
I
you,
do. I think
think
it
it
really
does?
cuts through.
What is
other
it, the
thing that cut
hypocrisy
through
or
Yeah.
just
was the clothing. They were very, very they really want to style themselves, and this is another example of that.
Yeah.
And they're willing to just throw money around and bury all their principles to look good.
Yeah.
Really, we care what they're saying and doing.
They're nicking
And one night-
£300 winter fuel allowance off pensioners,
It
but they're
was.
spending nearly £70,000 on a photographer. That's before his expenses, and he's going to fly all around the world with her. He went to Rome with her the other week to see the
And
Pope.
it was
Why is the Deputy Prime Minister seeing the Pope?
And it was around that time, it was just around the winter fuel, which was,
Yeah.
a couple of £100 per
Yeah.
elderly person being taken away just
Not-
at the time.
not all
that
elderly people will miss it though, will they?
I mean, what was the bar? £11,000? That's not a lot of money. So people below that...
Help the aged say it's about 1.5 million people who are really really going to suffer,
Look,
which is a lot of people.
I'm sorry, it doesn't. The details actually don't matter on that one. In terms of the impact, we all know elderly people who are staying in one room to keep warm this winter, who are wrapping themselves in a blanket, who are anxious, who are worried about the bills anyway. And taking away that winter fuel allowance was one of the most damaging and idiotic and financially, fiscally kind of incompetent things that the Labour government did in the early weeks for no reason at all.
Andrew, was it more about just an ill thought out application of policy? Let's be honest, there's a lot of people who don't need the £200 winter fuel allowance.
The King, the former Prime Minister Tony Blair, they said they could have means tested it. This was, in my view, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, the first woman Chancellor, she keeps telling us that, of course, trying to show she was the Iron Chancellor. Ironically, her great hero is Gordon Brown. In his final speech to the Labour conference as Prime Minister, he listed the Labour government's achievements, which shouldn't have taken long, frankly. But the first one he listed was the winter fuel allowance, which he brought in 1997. Rachel Reeves used to have a poster of Gordon Brown on her wall in her flat when she was at university. It was completely ill-conceived, and if she was courageous and a brave politician, she'd have admitted she got it wrong and done a U-turn. Mrs Thatcher did U-turns when it suited her.
Some U-turns are worth doing, and I'm afraid this one would have been worth doing. It would have been very, very popular. It was cruel, it was vindictive, it wasn't thought through. Whether it was intended or not intended, the consequences were so quickly, so obvious. They should have reversed it on this one.
They seem to have this anti-U-turn stance, don't they? They obviously decided before they were even elected, we're never going to U-turn. And they have to.
They think it looks like a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength.
It's a sign of strength. I totally agree.
I saw that Chancellor at the Labour conference, and of course there'd been this huge row over Lord Ali, a very rich supporter of the Labour Party, worth £200 million, giving Keir Starmer £30,000 worth of free clothes and designer spectacles. Rachel Reeves was a beneficiary too. And I was chatting to her, and I said, Chancellor, at the Labour conference, you look very smart today. She said, thank you very much. I said, did Lord Ali pay for those clothes? Off she went. Conversation was over. Yep.
Oh, brilliant.
Sense of humour bypass.
Well, we will come to the Chancellor Rachel Reeves in a minute, but I think it's time that I started asking you about the leader of the opposition. Kemi Badenoch was finally elected after a very long period of campaigning, about 4 months I think it was in total. She hasn't got off to the greatest of starts. Been a few hiccups, a few weird communications. Let's take a quick look before I come back to you on this.
I said I became working class when I turned 16, when I was working at McDonald's. Maternity pay varies depending on who you work for, but it is a function, where it's statutory maternity pay, it is a function of tax. Tax comes from people who are working. We're taking from one group of people and giving to another. This, in my view, is excessive.
I mean, look, she was elected, wasn't she, Charlotte, on the basis that, you know what, I actually sort of say what I think, I'm a straight talker, but it isn't quite working, is it?
Well, we're seeing that kind of attitude play out now, aren't we? And that's the reason she got elected, as you say, because, as I've said on the show before, she shoots from the hip. And I quite like that about her, but actually, in reality, seeing it play out is a bit awkward. I mean, she sort of said lunch is for wimps and she only eats steak. Then people ridiculed her, imagining her eating sort of steak dripping with fat at her keyboard. But one thing I will say about her, unlike Labour with their, anti-U-turn, she does sometimes explain herself or even take back things. And I quite like that about her, because sometimes she realises she messes up and she's not just trotting out lines from spin doctors, which is what's driving us all crazy about politicians these days. She's saying, look, I'm just going to speak as I find. Sometimes I'll take it back, sometimes I'll double down. I do quite like that about her, because at least it's different from these boring, bland politicians.
It's early days, Andrew, but you've seen a few Tory leaders come and go over your time. How's she doing?
I don't think it's a great start, actually, but I was in the House of Commons before I came here, and I bumped into Norman Lamont, who was Chancellor of the Exchequer under John Major, and he was in Margaret Thatcher's cabinet. And I said, it's not been a great start, has it? He said, Mrs Thatcher's first 6 months as Prime Minister, as Tory leader, as leader of the opposition, were dreadful. They were woeful. She's got time to improve. She needs to, and she needs to take advice. For instance, last week we had the farmers descending on Westminster in their tractors, an extraordinary protest. The country is behind these farmers because of the government's decision to change the tax rules, which will close hundreds of family-run farms that have been in the same family for generations. She ignored the farmers completely, even though they were outside Westminster at Prime Minister's questions, and waffled on about immigration for 6 questions. When she was challenged about it, she said, well, I saw the farmers before. No, that was the wrong call. And I saw her the night before and said, don't forget the farmers, Kemi, tomorrow.
Interesting.
And you advised her to do that.
I did. I said, go and see those farmers.
Is she lacking political nous then?
No, I think she's really intelligent, and I'm glad that, you know, she's got that.
Intelligent or political nous? Because the two don't necessarily come together.
I don't think she has friends. I don't think she's clubbable. I don't think she carries people with her, and that's a bit of a problem. I don't think she, you know, she clearly doesn't hang out with people. She's got a young family. She's got her husband. I think she's a woman who knows her own mind. I agree with Charlotte. She's willing to try and explain, because nowadays political interviews are all about kind of skewering them, getting them to say the wrong thing, getting the soundbite where the leader says something that makes them look very awkward. Like the thing about maternity pay. She has a point. Other people are paying for companies and for maternity pay. She was trying to make the point that it is sometimes accessible, that it might be. She's opening up conversations. I think she's an intelligent woman.
Conversations, but actually, you know, the Conservatives, let's be honest, they're much reduced. They're not that relevant. Do you think, though, if she does badly in 2025 local elections, they'll start to plot against her?
They can't help themselves, the Tories. They've got addicted to changing leaders. What was she, the 7th since 2016?
I've
or
lost
the 6th?
count.
Yeah, lost it, exactly. I think they'll give her a bit longer, but they won't give her much more than a year if it doesn't improve. And it's got to improve, but it is early days. She's only been leader for 5 or 6 weeks.
OK, listen, we're going to come, if I may, to our final moment. And Emma, I know you're particularly keen on this. We have a Chancellor of the Exchequer, first female Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, as she reminds us. I'll be honest, about 2 years ago, I thought she could probably be the first Labour leader, female Labour leader. However, have we got to a point with the Chancellor, and you can judge for yourselves in a second from this clip, where it's OK to be a politician disliked, it's even OK to be distrusted. You can still win an election if that's the case, as Keir Starmer's found out. But actually, are we getting to the point where she's being laughed at? Let's have a look at this.
What do you say about the fact there was a change made to the profile and it now says retail banking, it once said economist? Just explain that.
Well, I'm an economist. I studied economics. I got a master's in economics from the London School of Economics, and I worked as an economist at the Bank of England.
But it was changed, wasn't it, the profile?
Well, I worked as an economist. That is my profession. I am an economist.
So does the Deputy Prime Minister agree with me that this decision should be thrown in the trash can along with Rachel from Accounts' CV?
So that was Lee Anderson, Reform MP, very outspoken. He's basically making the fact that the Chancellor's a bit of a joke, can't be trusted on her CV, can't be trusted with the economy. Is she being laughed at now?
Yes, she's being laughed at, and she brings it upon herself, because she just kept repeating in that interview. I mean, it's funny, again, it's serious, it's sad, because she's in charge of our economy, and the UK is going down the lavatory right now. And this woman is in charge, and I don't know what she thinks she's doing, but she kept on repeating, I'm an economist at the Bank of England. I was an economist. I worked in, I'm an economist.
This is why Kemi's the antidote to this style of politician that, in rabbit in the headlights, just repeats the same thing over and over again. It's embarrassing. We're so sick to the back teeth of it as a nation. These people that just can only trot out one line. She should have explained herself, explained why she's changed her CV, maybe been even a little bit honest. We might have related to her.
Is it fair to say, though, that however many times she's like a rabbit in the headlights, it's a bit harsh to say the country's going down the toilet, isn't it?
Look, the economy's not doing very well, inflation's going up, and I think the big problem is confidence has collapsed. And it's her fault, because she's talked down the economy, she's talked down the country, she's gone on and on about this mythical black hole, £22 billion. If the black hole, which I don't accept was £22 billion, by the way, why did she raise taxes by £40 billion? Can't she add up? Which is a rather important question for a Chancellor of the Exchequer. She's not a very good politician.
And it's not just business confidence, it's the fact that Labour have gone on the attack for businesses, for working people, for people who are trying to run small businesses, loading them up with taxes, loading them up with excessive workers' rights and all of that. And so, yes, business confidence is at an all-time low. The market, the housing market is struggling. Mortgage rates are up. Consumer confidence is low. The mood of the country, the confidence, the sort of feeling that people want to go out, spend money, it's absolutely... They've destroyed it.
I'm going to gently bring you to a close, but I'm going to ask you for a quick fire answer. I did not warn you about this. What do you think we will be talking about in a year's time when we look back at 2025?
Can Keir Starmer survive another year?
Charlotte?
Can Rachel Reeves survive another year?
Who will be the next leader of the Labour Party?
Well, there you go. We'll have to have you all back next year to hold you to account for those predictions. Thanks again to my guests, Andrew Pearce, consultant editor and columnist at the Daily Mail, Charlotte Griffiths, editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, and finally, the author, writer and broadcaster Emma Woolf. And don't forget to subscribe to the TRT World YouTube channel for more lively debate and conversation. But for now, from me and all the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.